Emerging India, presented by ICICI Bank Business Banking, your partner in growth. Co-presented by TradeIndia.com, largest B2B e-marketplace. Powered by CRISIL. Online partner MoneyControl.com. In association with Air India, Fly Well. And Unbreako, world's #1 sockets, bolts and nuts, Deepak Fasteners Limited.
Hello and welcome to Emerging India 2007. Emerging India 2006 saw 35,000 entries. Yes, 35,000 entries, and that got us to the Limca Book of Records. As we go on the journey for 2007, we've decided to speak to some of the winners of last year.
After turning around the balance sheets of companies during their stint in the financial industry, Ajit Kamath, chairman and MD Arch Pharma Labs, along with his two friends, decided to turn around a sick company. In 1999, Kamath acquired a pharma unit registered with the BFIR. With no fund houses or banks coming up to finance a sick unit, he started with contract manufacturing for the first 2 years. With private equity coming in thereafter, the company has seen a steady and sharp upward growth curve. Today, they are world leaders in pharma intermediary called isoxaline site chains. With 6 manufacturing units across the country, company's turnover last year was 246 crore rupees and has a target of 550 crore rupees by 2008. The company has raised private equity 4 times and are valued at 400 crore rupees. Going forward, while the promoters have diluted their stake to 35%, they intend to go public by 2008.
We are very pleased here to be with one such winner. Arch Pharma Labs was the company. Ajit Kamath is the chairman and managing director of the company. We are here at one of his R&D labs. Ajit, how has life changed for you after winning the award last year?
Well, great peer recognition. It has helped me tremendously as far as the banking world is concerned, as far as customers around the world are concerned. And to be very honest, thanks to the growing websites around the world and the search engines, we were picked up by practically every customer, every vendor who congratulated us. They have started looking at us differently, and obviously it helps to know that you are one amongst the 35,000 winners. So things have really changed, and I'm sure all my peers want to catch up on Arch Pharma Labs after what happened.
Give us a sense of how your financials have changed over the last couple of years.
I still remember when we first went in for the awards, that was 2 years back. We went in with numbers of around 98 crores. From that time until now, we passed the 156 crores mark, then passed the 246 crore marks, and now we are slated to this year touch around 350 crores. So things have really changed. There is a lot of traction in the company.
Give us a sense of the early days when you started off.
We were looking at something radical from what we were doing in financial services, because I think we had reached our sweet spot. We had reached our pinnacle as far as the niche area that we were operating in financial services. We decided to look at it, and what better than to actually get into restructure a company, turn it around. So we got this opportunity by way of this company, that had registered with BIFR, where we saw that there was great potential. The only problem was the existing management could not really turn it around because of the burden of history that it carried, be it at the labor level, be it at the financial level, or be it the project management costs and time issues that came associated with the BIFR package. So it was a challenge. Let me tell you, in 99 things were very different. Different from what we are perceiving now. Because
how different were they?
Different in the sense, as far as financial backers are concerned, there were none. For the simple reason that...
Do you also have a story where you went to a bank or many banks and they just turned you away?
A lot of banks. In fact, the other thing that went against us during those days was that, as the bankers used to say, we lacked experience in the pharma world. That was number one. Number two, those days we were somewhere around 27, 28. So one of the bankers said that, you look at all my grey hair, and you guys don't have a single grey hair. What do you intend to do? I don't have any more left to, turn grey. Those were the days where I probably, we pounded the streets, went to practically every bank in India. The only answer that we came back with was, we don't finance, companies that are with BFR. We don't finance turnarounds.
Was that one of the reasons why you opted more for the private equity route and you just decided to offer stakes? You've got 3 private equity partners.
We came in at a time when private equity had started to bloom. When, private equity funds like ICICI, ILFS, etc., they started opening up the economy. And that's when I think we hit the sweet spot with them when we came around with this turnaround proposal, which were at that time, rejected by most of the banks. So this was the time for us to, get in for private equity, and over a period, we have continuously diluted. We have not really held back to our ownership positions or majority positions. For example, when we first went to them, we were 100% owners of the company, but now we are at around 31% level. So at every point of the company's growth, be it by way of acquisitions or be it by way of organic growth that we have seen over the years.
But is there a change today where banks are actually coming to you and saying, we're willing to give you money?
Yes, that changed immediately after private equity came in, when people started believing the story, because obviously every banker knows that, as far as vetting a proposal or conducting due diligence is concerned, the private equity world is notches above the banking industry. So when a private equity firm, or in fact I still remember in 2003, there were two who backed us, that was the turning point for us. Acceptability amongst the banks went to a real high, and every acquisition has been accompanied by banks, who I must say, I don't say that they are falling one over the other, but all the same, we have got banks competing against one another to help us finance our ambitions as far as acquisitions are concerned.
So if you were to go back again in today's time and start off something of your own, or talk to any other SME today, what would be that one mantra you would want to tell them? That should you go through the private equity route first, try and get a bit of a foreign partner or an Indian equity?
I would always, and I am a firm believer in private equity, I will advise every SME to look at private equity from a simple perspective. Not only does it enhance your profile as far as your credit rating is concerned amongst bankers, it also raises your stock amongst your peers. And number one and foremost is corporate governance. Typically, the Indian SME sector has been more of the mom and pop shop kind of stories. Whereas once you get in private equity, you're really talking about corporate governance, about taking your company to a different level as far as perception is concerned, as far as presentation is concerned, as far as business development is concerned.
What is the one thing that you would like the system to do to facilitate growth of SMEs in this country?
Well, straight from the heart, what I still feel is that we have not yet left the Inspector Raj. For example, in the pharma world, we are still talking about battling 20 plus departments. Most of the times, our executive time was spent battling these inspectors. So, if there is one way that the government could all, bundle up all these departments into a single window kind of system, I'm sure, entrepreneurs are going to bloom, because every entrepreneur can't afford the same trajectory that we had of hiring people and affording people.
We'll come back after this short break and ask Ajit Kamath about the road ahead. Stay with us. You said you've already knocked off the S, you've got the ME now.
Yeah.
You'll soon knock off the M. What's the challenges ahead for an SME as it grows bigger in that sense?
More, I would say that, from a purely promoter's perspective, it all depends on how much are you ready to dilute. That is the first and foremost question that comes up, when you are growing. I think the growth is limited by vision in today's world, and as far as India is concerned and in our industry, we are actually limited by our vision. There is so much that is possible, there is so much that is available. But you have to be reconciled to dilution. That is number one, I should say. Banks are there to support you. As long as you have got a scalable business model, I don't think that is anything that can stop you.
Like some of the other Emerging India Award winners, are you also planning to go public very soon?
Yes, but we want to reach a certain scale. We are very clear internally that we want to go in after having achieved something, rather than go with a prospectus saying that we will achieve something. So we would like to talk in the past tense about whatever we have achieved. So we are looking at probably a 2-year horizon, by which time we would really like to tap into the market.
We wish you all the best, Ajit.
Thanks, Vivek.
People Interactive India Limited, the name behind the much-known matrimonial portal Shaadi.com, was the Emerging India winner in IT and ITS category. It was the pioneering idea of Anupam Mittal, MD and Chairman of People Group, that led to the transition of traditional matrimonial process into the virtual world in 1999 through Shaadi.com. Thereafter, Shaadi.com was brought under the brand name of People Interactive Group in 2000. Today, it boasts of 9.1 million members and about 7.3 lakh success stories. The company is registering a growth of 200% year-on-year basis and has social networking website Proper.com and Astrolife under its umbrella as well. The company has also 100 Shaadi point centers across the country which offer matchmaking to wedding planning services. In April this year, People Interactive acquired $8 million through private equity for its domestic and overseas expansion plans.
They say marriages are made in heaven, but my guest today has actually made that happen on earth. Joining me today is Anupam Mittal, the Chairman and Managing Director of the People Group, who among other things has brought to India Shaadi.com. Anupam, how many couples at last count have you got together?
Oh, wow. I first of all, I don't take the credit myself. I think there's a huge system and organization that does this and has helped many couples across the world. But frankly, it's very hard for us to put a number because there's a lot of people who don't let us know about the successful matches because of the age-old system in India where people are asked for money when there's a successful match. We don't do that. But we are obviously not told because of that. But our estimates, and this is based on some science, would indicate that we've enabled 1 million matches over the last
1 million matches.
Yeah. So
let's go back to 97 when
Sure.
you came with this very innovative idea
Right.
to start something like this. 97, if you were to take the clock back,
Yeah.
what was the attitude of financiers, of banks? Today they're all bending over backwards. But at that point of time, how difficult was it to sell an idea like this?
let's talk about just the financing piece. Fortunately for us, I didn't have to look for financing. If you look at 97, the state of our economy was very, very different. You could probably rent space for 20 rupees a square foot. You could hire people for 5,000 rupees a month. So the numbers and the stakes that we are talking were too low to really seek financing. Today, you don't look at less than a couple of $1 million if you want to start a business. That's why you have to go knocking on the doors of banks and VCs and so on. In our case, it didn't really matter. And with Shaadi.com, we had a small software development business. So the cash flows for them kind of kept this running, and we used resources from here to keep this kind of chugging along. Although it took a long time for revenues to come from 97 to 2001 really is when the revenue started trickling in. But it wasn't really a big impact on us from a top line, bottom line standpoint. So we didn't really look for financing. I think the challenges were not as much to do with financing, but they were really to do with trying to sell this concept and build an entire industry as opposed to a business. You know, to go into an industry and build a business is different rather than building an entire industry. So that's where we saw challenges.
In today's scenario, how have things changed from a point of funding? Are you still dependent on your venture capital, private equity people, or have banks opened up to funding people like you?
We haven't ever really explored getting finance from banks in a large scale, but companies such as ours are primarily driven by venture capitalist type of ecosystems. We are high growth companies in high growth industries, and a lot of time without traditional barriers to entry such as capital, land, and so on, which is what banks like to see when they finance companies. They like to see hard assets. Our assets are built more on our intellectual property, which banks are starting to recognize now, but traditionally have not recognized. Having said that, though, in the last couple of years, we have seen a change in terms of banks being able to, or rather being willing to, look at extending financing maybe for short-term or medium-term loans to companies such as ours based on intellectual property or valuing intellectual property and brands, which is a significant departure from what we saw earlier. However, the one big barrier still seems to be that their procedures and processes have still not oriented themselves around this new development, around this new call, around this new need for the day.
So are you saying that for a young company which is dependent on intellectual property, and that's
Right.
where a lot of our entrepreneurs today are,
Absolutely.
it makes more sense to go through the venture capital route?
Absolutely, no question about it. It's not just capital. So I think there's a couple of things. Capital is one thing that needs that one needs to start a business and build a business. But in industries such as ours, which are very rapidly changing, which are very dynamic, and there are no rules, there's a lot of support systems that are required. Venture capitalists, or at least the good venture capitalists, if there is such a term, bring with them a wealth of experience which banks perhaps will not. Right? Banks are financial institutions focused on returns. Venture capitalists are also focused on returns, but they know that the path to return involves building enterprises and businesses. So they will help build those along with you.
What really are the challenges going ahead for a company which is so young, which is just about to build a business, you're branching out, you're setting up hundreds of outlets all across the country? And how do you think an SME or a smaller entity needs to brace up to take the challenge further?
I think ready financing is one challenge that SMEs will continue to face. The second, I think, is hiring. So most people in India still want to work with branded companies, want to work with large companies, and SMEs will constantly have a challenge trying to recruit people in such a scenario when the economy is growing equally for both the large companies and SMEs. The third is simply resource availability. So if you look at a country, while we've got some great human resources, there are areas in which we completely lack, and that comes down to our education system. So these will take a long time to address, and these are some of the sort of obstacles that SMEs need to overcome. From our perspective, I think our challenge really is to scale. We are at a point where we've gained significant traction in the last few years. Now we need to grow as fast, if not faster, and because this game really, at least in our industry, is about scale.
When you talk of hiring pressures, when you talk of scaling up pressures, how critical is it to be able to list so that you're able to, offer mechanisms like ESOPs, able to get that branding right for yourself? How important is that?
In terms of going IPO, I don't think there's any imperative to really go public. The imperatives are to build businesses with strong cash flows which can scale. IPOs, in my mind, are ways to a couple of things. One, IPOs is a way to raise capital, and two is to unlock shareholder wealth. I think shareholder wealth can be unlocked in other ways. ESOPs are not the only way. Of course, we do have an ESOP program ourselves, and we could look at a public market play in the next 2 to 3 years, but there are no immediate plans. We don't have any sort of need to sort of go to the public markets because other companies have done that. I don't think that's
My
fair.
question was more general for an SME.
Right.
We've seen that trend that
Yeah.
lots of them, I guess the time that they're taking to go public
Right.
has shortened. Maybe that's
Right.
a lot to do with the fact
Yeah,
that
so I think that has to do simply with the climate. So you're seeing the investment climate in the country is extremely positive. Valuations are much higher than they were. And at times like that, you will see companies, I mean, we see these cycles every few years, right? And we're going to see more and more companies going public. So in general, I'm not sure that going IPO is critical for the survival of an SME. I think there are a lot of SMEs which can stay at the size that they are forever and generate some great cash. And then there are SMEs which have strategic imperatives to get to a certain size. And for them, maybe going IPO becomes important.
Would you like to share some mantras of yours with other SMEs who are going to be watching you right now?
I think we all look for formulas for success, and I wish I had one because I just repeat it over and over again. But I think getting the right people involved is critical, especially at an SME level where you may not have other levels to compete, such as large resources and so on. So getting people who share a common vision, who share the same passion, is critical to keep you going, because there's going to be so many down periods that it's going to be impossible for one person to always keep their head above water. So you need people, you need a support system that's going to pull you through in such times to emerge victorious ultimately.
Anupam, one last question. If you were to send out a message to the authorities, to the system, whether it's the banking system or the government, for something that needs to be done to further fuel entrepreneurship and encourage SMEs, what would that be?
I think there'll be two things. One, very clearly, in India we have this definition, Vivek, of SSI, small scale industries, and SMEs. Now if you look at the incentives and the benefits that SSIs get, that industries that have been classified under small scale industries, is significant. I think that this definition is something that is a remnant of the past and needs to be done away with. We need to broaden that SSI definition and make all SMEs part of it, and then extend the benefits and the incentives to this entire SME universe, as opposed to simply certain sectors which fall under SSI. So I think that's something that needs to be done immediately, and the only person who can do it really is the government. I don't think that the government intends to keep it the way it is. It's simply a question of getting it done. So that's one area. And the second area is that we as a country and the government need to seriously look at our human resource factor, because I think we're headed for a huge resource crunch. We're not going to be able to become what we call a superpower or even a developed country unless this problem is tackled head on.
Thank you very much, Anupam, for talking to us.
Thank you very
and we
much.
wish you all the
Thanks
best.
a lot, Vivek. Cheers.
Well, that's all we have time for this week, but bring you some more Emerging India winners. Stay tuned.
Emerging India, presented by ICICI Bank Business Banking, your partner in growth. Co-presented by TradeIndia.com, largest B2B e-marketplace. Powered by CRISIL,